All right, guys. So the nightmare situation that we have been warning about for months now seems to be closer than ever as we're getting reporting that Israel is on the verge of striking Iran. So the headline here from CBS News is Israel is poised to launch an operation on Iran, multiple sources tell CBS News. And of course, by operation, they mean an offensive act of war, specifically likely in bombing their nuclear sites. And this couldn't happen without U.S. involvement. So this could be Israel dragging the United States willingly into a war with Iran. So some of the details here on what's been happening over the last couple of days. They say the U.S. anticipates that Iran could retaliate to this strike on certain American sites in neighboring Iraq. And this is part of the reason that the U.S. just advised some Americans to leave the region earlier on Wednesday. The State Department ordered non-emergency government officials to exit Iraq due to heightened regional tensions, and the Pentagon authorized military family members to voluntarily leave locations throughout the Middle East. And they also say that President Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff is still planning to meet with Iran for a sixth round of talks on the country's nuclear program in the coming days. And I believe that that's going to be happening on Sunday. So this is what you have to keep your eye on, right? I've seen different reporting in terms of what the US's position or what the demands from the US actually are in these talks. I've seen some reporting that the US has said, okay, we'll allow for some level of enrichment for a civilian nuclear program for energy and whatnot with some oversight. I've seen some reporting that the US position is zero enrichment, which if that is the case, it's a complete non-starter that obviously Iran would never agree to. And so in that situation, we would end up spiraling towards this Israeli strike on Iran and then a retaliation, and then it spirals from there. But this talk that's coming up in a couple of days, it's what's going to decide, whether or not we're going to get into this completely unnecessary war. But they continue. They say a reporter asked Mr. Trump Thursday if an Israeli strike on Iran is imminent, and he said, well, I don't want to say imminent, but it looks like something that could very well happen. Trump then spoke about Iran at an appearance at the Kennedy Center on Wednesday evening, telling reporters that Americans were advised to leave the region, quote, because it could be a dangerous place, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Mr. Trump also reiterated that the U.S. did not want Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, saying, we're not going to allow that. Now, we also have, as pointed out here by Sagar, the Trump administration is, quote, weighing options to support Israeli military action without leading it, including aerial refueling or intelligence sharing. And as he points out here accurately, the narrative of an independent Israeli strike is bunk. This would be a U.S.-sanctioned operation, and we must stand against that. And he's entirely correct. There is no way, right, of two things. That, number one, Israel could pull off this kind of an attack against Iran's nuclear sites without the U.S., or number two, that they could withstand the response from Iran in the case that they do strike Iran's nuclear sites. The response from Iran would easily overwhelm Israel if they were to stand by themselves. So this is Trump saying, we're going to be involved in this. We might not be leading the charge. We might not be the tip of the spear, but we are intertwined with Israel on this war. Now we continue. We also have here from Barack Ravid, the White House envoy Steve Witkoff privately warning top Senate Republicans that Iran's retaliation to an Israeli strike on its nuclear program, again, could overwhelm Israel's defenses and cause mass damage and casualties. You don't say. I mean, no shit. What exactly do you think is going to happen? This is why we're warning against this kind of a war. We continue. Barack Ravid also pointing out here that Trump is saying apparently that he wants an agreement with Iran and stressed that the U.S. is close to a good deal with the Iranians. He says, I prefer a deal as long as I think there is a chance. I would rather that they, the Israelis, don't go in order to not ruin it. So a couple of things here. First off, obviously, Trump is the guy who ripped up the previous deal that Iran, according to international agencies, was following in accordance with. Trump ripped up that deal, escalated tensions with Iran, assassinated Qasem Soleimani, made the situation infinitely worse. So he ripped up the previous deal that was preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And now he says, I prefer a deal. What kind of deal is Trump going to get that's not sort of just an Obama nuclear deal 2.0? That's what we would have to go for. And even that, you'd be lucky if the Iranians would even, dare to look us in the face and trust us for a second time around, given that we're the ones who pulled out last time and stabbed them in the back. So that's the first thing. The second thing is he says, I hope that the Israelis don't go in to ruin the prospect of this deal. Israel is not in charge here. Well, they are, but they don't have to be. You are the president of the United States. You have all of the leverage, if you want to use it, over whether or not Israel bombs Iran. All you would have to say in order to prevent them from doing so is, listen, if you go and bomb Iran, you're on your own. We're not going to help you. We're not going to intercept missiles for you. We're not going to strike Iran for you. You are on your own if you choose to do that. Even that alone, right? You don't even have to say we're going to cut off the weapons or sanction you or whatever. Even just saying we're not going to help you in this, that would cause Israel to step back from the equation. So, same as I was saying under the Biden administration, the notion that the U.S. is just sort of like a passive observer as to what Israel does or doesn't decide to do is nonsense. It's nonsense. And so he's sort of playing that same game here. Oh, I hope they don't do it. Well, then make them not do it. They're not going to do it without you at least tacitly signing off on it. Another thing here, in terms of the nuclear weapon hysteria, I pointed this out on Twitter. I mean, the tweet was, Pentagon believes Iran is actively working towards a nuclear weapon, according to U.S. Senator Tom Cotton. And what I said here is, they've literally been saying this my entire life. Now, I was actually wrong in this tweet because they haven't been saying this for my entire life. They've been saying this for longer than I've been alive, right? I'm 25 years old right now. I was born in 1999, as pointed out here by Asal Rod. Netanyahu in 1993, 7 years before I was born, said that Iran will have the bomb by 1999. So according to Netanyahu, who's now the current prime minister, 2.5 decades later, he was predicting that Iran would have a nuclear weapon by the time that I was born. We're now 25 years in the future, and they're still saying the same thing to try to justify, to manufacture consent for a war with Iran. Timeline here, in terms of all of these various claims from Benjamin Netanyahu. 1992, he said they're 3 to 5 years away. 1993, he said three to 5 years away. 1995, he says they're 3 to 5 years away. Skip ahead here. 2005, he said they're 1 to 2 years away. Skip ahead. 2008, he said they're 1 year away. Then 1 year after that, he said they're 1 to 2 years away. 2012, he said, oh, now it's 6 to 12 months away. Then in 2021, months to 1 year away. 2024, weeks to months away, and in 2025, days to weeks away. So again, they have been saying this for literally decades at this point. It is just manufacturing consent. Benjamin Netanyahu has wanted to go to war with Iran, and he's wanted the U.S. to fight this war for him for decades at this point. This is what he has been lobbying for, and I guess he's looking at the Trump administration, and he looks at the state of Hezbollah, he looks at the state of Hamas, some of the regional allies of Iran, and he says, maybe this is the best opportunity that we're going to have, and so he wants to pull the trigger. Now again, Trump can decide to flip the safety on and prevent him from doing that. But this is something that he has wanted to do for a very long time. And it's not because, Iran's about to get a nuclear weapon tomorrow and they're going to blow up the entire region. That's not why this is happening, to be clear. Now, again, in terms of Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel trying to sabotage the prospects for an Iran nuclear deal 2.0, he has been saying repeatedly that he thinks they should use the Libya model for Iran. He's doing this in a very calculated and deliberate way to scare Iran away from the negotiating table. To say what we should do is treat the Iranian leadership, the Iranian government, in the same way that we did with Gaddafi, who was then sodomized and drugged through the street and killed, right? Everybody knows what happened to Libya when the U.S. got involved, right? So threatening that to Iran is threatening the complete and utter collapse of the Iranian government and of Iranian society in general. That's what he's saying here. That's the model that he's calling for. Again, he's sabotaging this. He does not want an Iran peace deal. He wants the U.S. to fight a war on his behalf. Now, finishing off here, we had Ro Khanna in one of these congressional meetings here with the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and he used the words of conservatives who are against a potential war with Iran, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson, against Hegseth here, obviously being a former Fox News commentator. This is going to hit hard, but he questioned him on this, and let's go ahead and look at a little bit of what Pete had to say.
Mr. Secretary, I'm hoping we can start where we may have common ground. No war in Iran. In 2016, President Trump was one of the few people on the Republican stage to have the guts to say that George W. Bush's war in Iraq was an utter disaster. He promised the American people no endless wars. Tucker Carlson has said that thousands of Americans will die if there's a war in Iran. And he is cautioning that currently neocons are trying to get President Trump into a war in Iran. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has said the American people don't want to bomb Iran. Will you today assure the American people and the MAGA movement that you will not bomb Iran unless we are hit?
Congressman, it's good to hear you quoting conservatives.
When they're right, I quote them.
I will tell you this. The president has been earnestly and completely committed to a peace process, has given Iran every opportunity, those talks ongoing, but he also fully recognizes the threat that Iran with a nuclear weapon would exist.
Will you commit to us not bombing them? I mean, that's what the conservative MAGA movement is calling for it online. You'll see. I mean, they want a commitment that we not bomb Iran unless we're directly hit.
Well, here in this forum, it wouldn't be prudent for me to commit or not to commit. My job is to be postured and prepared in the region, just as the chairman.
How about this?
Any potential capability.
Would you agree with this analysis that Netanyahu is itching for a fight? If Netanyahu uses American missiles to hit Iran, he's going to drag us into a war there because Iran's going to say they're using American missiles. Our military knows that you cannot, just through hits, eliminate Iran's nuclear capability. They'll simply go underground, and they will then end monitoring. And unlike Iraq, they're in heavily civilian sites. Will you stand up today and make it clear to Netanyahu that that escalation, what he's threatening just yesterday, is not in the American interest, that he should not be dragging America into war with Iran?
Well, Congressman, that question included a lot of speculation. What I know is that Bibi Netanyahu is going to put his country first, and we're going to put our country first, and we're positioned properly in the region.
Okay, so what Ro Khanna was asking there towards the end, obviously aside from Pete Hegseth dodging the question, what he was saying there at the end is one of the most important things in this entire conversation, right? Because it's one thing to say, yeah, the Iran war would be 10 times as disastrous and bloody and destabilizing as even the Iraq war was, which is obviously saying a lot. But beyond that, striking Iran's military sites wouldn't even solve the problem that the Israelis or the Americans who want war with Iran say that it would solve. It's not going to eliminate their potential possibility of getting a nuclear weapon. What it will do is it'll just push it underground to the point where now they're saying, okay, well, we're not going to interact with any sort of international oversight or observers or, anybody who wants to come in and check the status of where our nuclear program is. We're going to move all of that underground. We're going to continue with it. And now we're actually more incentivized to get a nuclear weapon because you're bombing our country. You're going to war with our country. So we need that kind of a weapon as a matter of self-preservation. So it's not as if you can just go in, hit a couple of sites, and then boom, Iran has no possibility of getting a nuclear weapon. That's not how this would play out. The only military way that you could possibly get that done is like a full-scale invasion from Israel, from other regional partners, and from the United States into Iran, which would obviously not work out for anybody involved. And that's my last point here, is just that this war would not be good for any of the actors that are having that would potentially be involved in this, right? It wouldn't be good for Iran for obvious reasons. It wouldn't be good for Israel for, again, obvious reasons. They would also face significant hits. They would lose, plenty of civilian casualties, plenty of military assets and soldiers as well. And it also obviously wouldn't be good for the United States to get ourselves involved in another endless, bloody, destabilizing war in the Middle East. It's not good for anybody. Nobody fucking wants this. The American people certainly don't want this. It seems like the only people who want this is like Benjamin Netanyahu and some of the Israeli leadership. This is not good for anybody in the region, any of the people involved, and definitely not for the world. So I'll leave you guys off with that. Terrifying prospects. We'll have to track how those talks happen over the weekend with Steve Witkoff and the Iranian delegation. I wish I could tell you that I have a solid prediction of what's going to happen, but it doesn't look good. It definitely does not look good, and this unless the U.S. is willing to sort of come off of our position of zero enrichment and push towards something closer to the Obama-era nuclear deal. But outside of that, buckle up because it's about to get absolutely terrifying.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying